I'm Nicola Talent and you're watching Crime World, a podcast about criminals, drugs and the underworld in Ireland and across the globe. Make sure you subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you can be the first to watch all our latest episodes. You can also listen wherever you get your podcasts. There is figures been put around of how much these legal costs would be, 500,000. Is that an underestimation, would you think?
Well,
52-day trial.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously a reasonable estimation, you know. I mean, we can't really know, but I suppose they used to always say 10,000 a day in the High Court.
Did they not say 100?
Well, it depends.
How much it costs
He's not gonna bear the state's costs.
Mm-hmm.
So he'd be bearing his own. Gerry Hutch obviously be paying for his own costs, but not for the state. Unlike in a civil case where if you lose, you pay the other person's as well.
So that's what they're going on, basically 10,000 a day, 52 brings it up to
Something like
500,000.
Yeah.
So, you know, I wonder, what about the pre-trial, all the work that would have been gone through by the
Certainly,
like all that CCTV to go through and all the pre-trial work by the solicitors. That was Ferry solicitors.
Yeah, I mean, look, exactly, we don't know. They certainly, whatever way, it'll amount to a lot more than you got paid for your 52 days to cover the trial anyway. You can be sure of that.
You don't know that, though. You've no idea.
I estimate.
What little secret deal I have going. And how much I actually got paid. You don't see me going off to the Bahamas, I suppose. So you kind of
not
do.
regularly.
Yeah, well, it certainly was more than I got paid, more than you got paid, probably more than everybody in that courtroom got paid together.
Yeah, it is.
Between cops and everybody else. But anyway, so look, the point is that he's failed in his bid for the legal costs in the Regency murder trial. His defence team went in there this week to the special criminal court before the same judges who found him not guilty and asked for his money, his costs, and they were refused. And we kind of reckoned that he was going to get it, but...
Yeah, I mean, it throws up the difference between the special criminal court and an ordinary jury court, really. In a jury court, you know, you can only ever guess why the jury made the decision they made, because they just return a verdict of either guilty or not guilty.
Yeah.
And if somebody is found or not guilty, in nearly all cases, you know, that's the starting point at which they probably get their costs, or the majority of them. The difference in the special criminal court for Gerry Hutch is that there, as well as the verdict, there's a long judgment about why that verdict is reached, and that judgment has played a key role really in saying that he should bear the costs of his own defence. You know, the judges, Justice Tara Burns, when she made her judgment finding him not guilty of the murder of David Byrne, she also made other findings as well of fact, including that, you know, a couple of key ones, that Gerry Hutch was the patriarchal figure within the Hutch Organised Crime Group.
Yeah.
And secondly, that he had control over the weapons used in the Regency Hotel. I'm sure Gerry, at the time he was found not guilty, that sort of stuff wasn't in his mind. He walked out a free man. What cost that? But those things have now come back to haunt him. And basically, his defence said he's been found not guilty. He should get his costs. And the state said, well, he's been found not guilty, but he has been. I actually looked up the pronunciation of this word, approbation, which means, is it not?
Mr. P or something.
Approbation, I think it is, Nicola.
Spell it.
APPROBATION, which kind of means basically it does not. What they said was, and we can check this pronunciation later. It did not amount to an approbation of his actions, effectively, which means that, you know, the not guilty verdict didn't mean he was utterly vindicated in everything that he did, and in fact they said that he, you know, there's reasons he hadn't been involved in criminal activity, and therefore the prosecution was justified in being brought against him.
Yeah. So now that's really, I suppose, where they would differ, because I think from let's peel this back a little bit, I suppose. And I will say, I was speaking to somebody who'd be close enough to Gerry Hutch and who has discussed this with him, so I have a bit of an idea where he's coming from on it.
Yeah.
But if we peel it back a little bit, when he's first charged along with Jonathan Dowdall, the two of them are facing murder charges.
Yeah.
They go and they take a legal case requesting that they're put before the ordinary courts and not the special criminal court.
Yeah.
Both of them do that, and that fails.
Yeah, it's a
bid fails.
judicial review, I think, isn't it, where they say that they're entitled to be heard by a jury of their peers, and that wasn't successful ultimately.
That wasn't successful. So they're put before the special criminal court essentially because of who they are, and because, look, in the end of the day, this was seen and is a gangland crime, the murder of David Byrne. So they, I suppose, let's say they had been allowed go to the ordinary courts, their case would have started in the district court and made its way up.
Yeah.
Because any murder charge is too serious to be held in a district court, obviously. But at that level, before any trial would have happened, there would have been a kind of a pre-hearing when they could have, given an idea of what the case against them was.
Yeah.
Now, you do have to wonder if at that point the state had said the case against both of them at that point is, we have these 10 hours of tapes. And, if they detailed the fact that basically Gerry Hutch didn't make any admissions during those 10 hours.
Yeah. And also, obviously, at that point, it would have arisen where the tapes are recorded.
Yes.
Which in this case was in a large part in Northern Ireland, outside the jurisdiction.
So that would have all sort of, and you'd wonder if at that point, if that had have happened, would the case have gone ahead? Because there are certainly, I remember there was certainly a case in the west of Ireland, Sandra Collins, there was no body in relation to, she's still a missing person, and a local man was placed on murder charges, but the trial never started because it was thrown out basically before it got underway because the judge deemed there wasn't enough evidence to go ahead with the trial.
However, like the other case would be that those sort of challenges are pretty much nearly everybody who comes, maybe not everybody, but a lot of people who get brought on murder charges, these pre-hearing charges are brought out seeking to get them struck out. They're quite rarely does it happen.
Yeah.
But certainly, Mr. Hutch would make the case that he would have had he didn't get that chance.
He didn't get that chance, I suppose. But knowing now, I suppose, what we do of what the evidence was, and clearly the judgment states that there just simply wasn't the evidence that he was one of the shooters.
No, but but I suppose that to give the opposite point of view, the judgment would say that this evidence had to be tested in court, and there was enough for it to be tested. Now, the fact that it was ultimately found wanting is a different matter. Mm-hmm. You can't know that in advance. In fact, you have to, for example, I think they really focused on Jonathan Dowdall in particular. Mm-hmm. Ultimately, his evidence wasn't accepted, and but in the judgment they said you can't know that in advance. You get this statement, you read it, it's only after it's tested in court, he's cross-examined, he's brought through it step by step, that you realise how credible it is or not. Certainly in advance of...
Well, he came along after those charges were brought.
He did.
Some months after those charges were initially brought. So I don't know whether that makes a difference as regards it, because presumably the decision to take your... and of course, Hutch would have been entitled to free legal aid. He was up on a murder charge. He would have been entitled to that in the same way as everybody else is.
Well, he's entitled to apply for it, is he? But he still could have been questioned
I think on a murder charge, you're entitled to it. I think everybody's entitled to it.
Well, they nearly all get it anyway.
On a murder charge. I don't think on every charge.
No.
But certainly on that one, you're entitled to your free legal aid. But in getting it, I suppose they would have maybe... Could we suggest they would have had to go through Mr. Hutch's finances, and maybe that was one of the reasons why he didn't go for the free legal aid?
Quite possibly.
Quite
possibly.
And I think maybe, I suppose if you were him, you would have seen that as handing the state an opportunity on a plate to go through your earnings and where they'd come from and all the rest of it. That could have taken a long time. Would he maybe have had to give evidence himself? I'm sure he might have.
Oh, absolutely he would have.
Free legal aid.
Yeah, he'd have to. Certainly properties abroad and all of that
would have all had to been discovered.
Would have all had to have been exactly. They would have had to. He would have had to declare them all.
Yeah, so you can kind of, I suppose, maybe see why that mightn't have been too attractive. Nonetheless, he made the decision to go private, basically.
Yeah.
So he took on his own legal costs basically, in his defence. That was at a point, I mean, his defence team were hired when he was standing trial with Jonathan Dowdall. You know, so.
Look, I mean,
and at that point, all they had was the tapes. They didn't have Jonathan Dowdall's evidence as well.
They didn't have his evidence. I mean, obviously, whatever evidence they had, the DPP decided it was sufficient.
Yeah.
And I think Gerry Hutch's defence team in this hearing brought that up, that, questioning what they ever had to bring this murder trial. But I think the court did address that and said that, they don't know what was in the thinking of the DPP, and they never can know. But that by the time it got to the court, Jonathan Dowdall's statement was there, and that was not assessed before the trial. It had to be assessed in the trial itself.
Mm-hmm. So yes, Justice Tara Byrne said the prosecution had been warranted.
Yeah.
And although he was acquitted, the court found he was involved in serious criminal conduct underlying the charge against him, and that he was the patriarchal figure in the Hutch Organised Crime Group. That's basically the reason, the kind of the core reason that his application for his legal costs have been denied.
Yeah, and of course she said as well that the court was asked to, while it was a murder charge, part of the court's job was to assess the weapons and who controlled them and what they were being used for, and how that chain of evidence stacked up, and therefore they did assess them, and that stands.
So where does he go with this now? Because I mean, he ain't happy about this. He believes that he is entitled to his legal costs, that the state should never have tried him for murder, that they screwed up basically by accusing him of being one of the shooters, that he was extradited from Spain, brought back, kept in jail for a year, and then 52 days of this trial he had to defend himself, when all along in his mind and what he believes is that, it was almost the state were being opportunistic against him, that if he was another ordinary citizen, they wouldn't have gone to those lengths and wouldn't have attempted to put him on trial for murder with such flimsy evidence. Yeah,
I mean, where you go from here, I mean, I can't remember a hearing like this where costs have been laid in something equivalent. There's always an appeal when it comes to the courts.
Yeah.
That's just the fact of it. And ultimately there would be possible to appeal to the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
So, and this
is going to continue to cost money, though.
Well, it could, and that's the risk that you take.
He's not going to get legal aid now, is he?
No, he's not going to get. No, absolutely not.
He's not going to get legal aid now to appeal the decision, or is he?
No, he definitely wouldn't. And he obviously, if he did bring it, say, to the Supreme Court, he would get his costs if he wins for the Supreme Court hearing. Supreme Court hearings obviously tend to be a day or two, but they're solely on points of law, and the points of law to be discussed would be, I suppose, the judgment issued by the courts regarding the costs. They lay it out quite clearly that it was a justified prosecution, and that they've made findings of fact, which they are asked to do, and those findings of fact don't amount to a vindication, and that he's not entitled. They amount to a vindication on the murder charge,
but not
as
involvement in crime, basically.
Not involvement in crime, and basically what they say is serious criminal conduct underlying the charge, and that Hutch was a patriarchal figure. So that's when you appeal.
It was an unusual verdict in one way, wasn't it? That it did kind of go into those extra. It felt like extra detail at the time. The judgment, I mean, not the verdict. Yeah. The judgment was kind of like very meaty, and
well, it was. You see the equivalent judgments, I suppose, sometimes in appeal courts.
Yeah,
where they give, they list out the reasons for the decisions, and I suppose it follows that example. But what it's really, but when you appeal to a higher court, you don't get to replay all of that stuff.
Of course, it'll just literally be on the
judgment.
It'll
narrow in on that judgment and narrow in on the legal precedents, and then you'll be able to argue. And I can't really think of another case like a hearing like that. So again, it's kind of...
So if you were in his position, you would be laying out more money.
You'd be laying out
on another gamble, essentially.
Maybe another couple of 100,000.
And you'd have to work out what you're up against, because you're up against the judicial system here, really.
You're up against the judicial system, who've made like a kind of a few clear kind of findings, and you know, I mean, just like we don't know how much 500,000, you know, that's an estimate. We've no real idea about Gerry Hutch's worth.
No, we don't.
We can estimate. I mean, it's any number of estimates you hear.
Yeah, because look, I mean, 500,000 to me to try and come up with it would be absolutely
life changing,
totally and utterly. And you know, I think if I was in the position, I'd have to keep going and hope to win at some point, because you know. Yeah. But if you're somebody who maybe has or can put their hand on that and do it, would you think? Do you know what?
I'll walk away.
I walked away on April 17th.
Yeah.
That was, the hand of luck was on me, really.
Well, it could have gone another way.
It could have gone the other way, and it could have gone such a bad way. And that, you know, that what is your freedom is worth more than any financial figure it could be put on it.
Yeah, 100%.
And that was a win. And I mean, it's so unusual for somebody to get a win in the special criminal court, that to go back a second time now looking for the money might have been just that win too much, too far, you know what I mean? So I don't know, trying to work it out. But I suppose he could also possibly issue civil proceedings against the state, could he?
I don't think so. I mean, I really don't think so. I mean, that would mean that everybody who's found not guilty of a charge can bring civil proceedings. I mean, the state is entitled to bring unsuccessful criminal charges against an individual. It has to be able to do that.
Yeah. It does.
100%.
And I mean, he's slightly, if he didn't want to go for the free legal aid in the first place, because maybe he didn't want to have to answer questions as to his finances, he couldn't claim that he was at a loss of X amount over the year he was in prison waiting for this, or that his earning capabilities have been, destroyed because of a decision by the state to bring these charges against him, or erroneously or whatever. Because he's then back to that position that he has to, unveil all his finances. So he's a bit goose that way. It's a little bit like checkmate, this, I think.
Yeah, and of course the state have to be able to bring charges that don't always succeed. Other than that, you'd have to be guaranteed somebody is guilty before you bring any criminal action against them.
Yeah.
And that goes the same for people who spend time. I mean, obviously, Gerry Hutch spent 18 months, was it, on remand in prison?
Yeah, he was certainly, he was over a year anyway.
Yeah, over a year, right? So he can't sue for that either.
Yeah.
That loss of time and loss of freedom, because, again, it has to be something that the state can do. Mm-hmm. Other than that, the people who do end up suing the state, I think, are miscarriage of justice cases and things like that. That is not what he hasn't. There isn't a miscarriage of justice case here. This is somebody being found not guilty.
They haven't hidden evidence.
No, it hasn't been overturned on the basis. I mean, and it can be. It's a formal thing, isn't it? A miscarriage of justice.
Yeah.
Some people have got it over time in the Irish courts, but this is not the case.
In a way, like Gerry Hutch was really goddamn lucky that the state didn't bring other charges against him. And I mean, I think the judgment particularly sort of suggested that had there been other charges there, had there been firearms charges, possibly, had there been directing a criminal organisation, had there been conspiracy to murder, or that those other charges around, the joint enterprise sort of
Though his defence did argue against that and say, he's faced the charge he faced.
Oh, no, that's what I mean. But I'm just saying he's quite lucky in one way that they didn't put other charges against him.
Yeah.
Because clearly the judges were saying that the reason he was not guilty was because the charge was so specific that he was the shooter.
Yeah.
Had there been other things there for them to consider?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they more or less said it really unusually, but of course...
I think if I was Gerry Hutch, I would just pay or suck it up, maybe.
And the other thing sometimes with people who appeal, what happens is they have no money anyway.
Yeah.
So they just keep appealing because they know...
That's what I would do, you see.
Yeah. So if you have no money...
You'd have to pretend to the solicitors, no, I'll pay you, I'll absolutely pay you, but then hope to God that they...
But also, they they can just keep appealing. They no money, so
Yeah.
even if they lose and somebody gets a €1 million judgment against them, if you don't have anything, they can't take anything off you.
Yeah.
Right? But Gerard Hutch obviously owns property in this country.
Yeah.
I don't know exactly how much he owns, but if he keeps appealing, they can get a judgment and seize, for example, assets, And sometimes you see the people who just keep appealing. They know it really frustrates the state, because the state know it doesn't matter whether they win or lose. We're never going to get any money out of them anyway. They have nothing. And so they can just keep appealing themselves. And sometimes you get this civil litigants, the lay litigants, they just keep going because they can rack up whatever costs they want for the state. Nothing is ever going to happen. And Gerry Hutch is just not in that position.
Yeah.
Interestingly, the Sean Galland for the DPP, he argued that the cost issue comes down to judicial discretion in relation to the facts and circumstances of the case. Now that's obviously
exactly?
Well, he means that judges get to decide.
Yeah.
So he's effectively saying that is the legal position. Certainly that's what the state is saying, the legal position. It's at the judge's discretion. So what legal points would Gerry Hutch appeal on that basis? It's because it's at their discretion, it's effectively saying their opinion
is final.
Is what matters.
Is what matters, yeah.
Yeah, is what matters. And then there's not necessarily these kind of there may well be technical legal precedents or whatever. But, in this case, at least the state is saying that the judges decide, and that's that.
Yeah, yeah. So look, interesting. And he remains abroad.
He remains abroad. I mean, it's as...
I think it's just, you're that long.
I mean,
maybe he's just enjoying a bit of sunshine.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of ironic, isn't it? Like he's possibly over in sunny Spain, and as he's in sunny Spain, Liam Byrne,
I know,
is also in sunny Spain in going the other way. I mean, going the other way. I mean,
it's funny, because it always seems to be like that.
Yeah.
And do you know, when you consider the whole thing that happened?
Yeah.
I mean, the split
in
the first place in the cartel at a level that was under Gerry Hutch. I don't believe he'd anything to do with the Kinahans.
Yeah.
I honestly don't believe he'd anything to do with the Kinahans, the Kinahan Organised Crime Group that existed in Spain. His nephew did.
Yeah.
But I don't think he had.
No.
And, then he's drawn in, this feud erupts. The balance of power sits firmly with the Kinahan organisation for a long, long time. And the few loyalists who remain on the Hutch side do so,
through family ties and things like that. Rather than, they seem such a small and unsubstantial organisation relative to the Kinahans at that point.
Completely. I mean, I think an awful lot of people went with the Premier League team, not believing that there was ever going to be a revitalised Hutch crew, and I think there was a lot of disloyalty there. I'd say if you were in the position, you'd have got a real view of who were your friends.
Oh, absolutely.
One of those situations,
and if you see some of the things people saying on social media about certain members of the Kinahan cartel based in North Dublin, and they'd say, "Oh, sure, Eddie Hutch used to feed you as a kid, and you were in and out of his house growing up," and that would have been the case, surely, because some of those guys who remain loyal to Daniel Kinahan today would have been literally childhood friends with Gerry Hutch. I mean, from
and
the
they
year
would have grown up with them, and
they would have grown up with the Hutches, not so much the Kinahans,
Yeah, and I mean the information that was passed to the Kinahans for money.
Yeah.
And plenty of it we can't discuss.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we know of a lot of information that was passed on to the Kinahans that we'd love to discuss, but we just can't. And they would have been from people who would have been, sort of looking as if they were loyal to the Hutch faction, but actually they took the blood money.
100%.
So, I mean, it would have been, it's been an incredible thing. And then, like everything in the underworld, all of a sudden, the power balance has shifted completely.
Yeah.
And now you have a position where the Kinahans, certainly in this country, are the complete underdogs.
Yeah.
Where they're sitting globally. A lot of talk about Iran.
Yeah.
And, actually, I was just there seems to be questions at this stage. Are they actually there?
Yeah.
Are they actually there? Are they still in Dubai? Everybody's relying on the information coming from the United Arab Emirates. People wondering why Daniel Kinahan still remains at large. I would think the bigger question is why Sean McGovern remains at large.
Yeah.
We don't know for a fact yet that there's a charge for Daniel Kinahan. We know there's certainly that he's wanted here, and there's files being prepared, and the Americans want him. We can see that on a poster. But there is an actual warrant for the arrest of Sean McGovern, and we're more than a year on, and the Dubai police, the United Arab Emirates, haven't seen fit to lift him and send him back.
Exactly, and it's not a complex charge, is it? He's facing he's facing a murder charge and a murder. Like, sometimes the issues arise in extraditions between different countries if it's some sort of directing a criminal gang, and there might not be an equivalent charge in the country in which people are based, and that can cause all these complications. But murder is murder, and a murder charge.
There's a warrant there. He's wanted before the Special Criminal Court.
And you can only imagine that the reason they're not moving against Sean McGovern is because of the depth of links that the Kinahans have in the Gulf state.
The connections they have.
The connections,
absolutely.
And the defence that comes from that. Also, whatever about some of the guys who end up in Dubai that are not maybe forward thinking, but you have to think Christie Senior, a man like that, must have planned at least 10 or 12 escape routes at this stage. Would he just be sitting there passively waiting for the knock to come? I don't know. But there's...
Now, but that's the position they're in one way or another. I mean, we did our podcast there a couple of episodes ago about Iran and about Kish Island and how it really is one of the last ports for them to remain safe, a tiny little island like that. So they're not... Okay, they're still free for the moment.
Yeah.
But they're not in a powerful position.
No.
Like, the balance of power is completely shifted to Hutch. And to whoever, shall we say, is involved in that Hutch Organised Crime Group, whoever's out and about. I know they have been in the past very chaotic, etc. But they're in a better position now than they ever were before. So it's just interesting the way that can happen.
Of course,
so
and to
see
Liam Byrne being carted off in his flip flops, all these years on from, if we look at the Regency Hotel in the aftermath of that murder, there was talk of Liam Byrne is going to be a target, and obviously the cab case has happened, but really it's 7 years, is it, at this point? And then justice finally catches up. And
he's at the beginning of that road now.
He's at the beginning of that road.
And the EncroChat evidence has proved time and again. Actually, we're going to talk about that for a separate pod about the EncroChat cases that are there, and what evidence there is on Liam Byrne, how that case will be conducted. But I mean, it has proved time and again to be banged to rights.
Yes.
The EncroChat, an awful lot of the EncroChat victims have shown up, pleaded guilty, because they just know they're gone. Like, the evidence is, unlike the case against Gerry Hutch, the evidence is actually there on the EncroChat.
Yeah.
It's physical.
However, there's still another swings and roundabouts for the Hutch Organised Crime Group. The idea that, maybe Gerry Hutch, and maybe for him in particular and personally, he might pay his money and head off into the sunset, but there are still serious criminal investigations going on into the Hutch Organised Crime Group, and that may swing again out of their favour,
Mm-hmm.
It just shows you that the state has a long patience, doesn't it?
Yeah.
To go after people. And I know we always talk about Garda resources and other resources. The state maybe doesn't have endless resources, but relative to criminal organisations, it really does. And it can chip and chip and chip away. Mm-hmm. And who knows what the future will bring.
Yeah, they always say that the criminals have to be lucky all the time, isn't that it?
They have to be lucky all the time, exactly.
So anyway, our advice to Mr. Hutch, wherever he is out there, enjoying the sun and his freedom, is maybe...
Yeah, man, maybe you'd enjoy...
Quit while you're ahead.
Maybe quit while you're ahead and,
Suck up the 500,000 if you can, if you have it.
Yeah.
If you have it in your back pocket, just maybe I think pay it and walk away. And sometimes we have to count our blessings.
Sometimes we do.
Thank you, Niall.
Thanks, Nicola.